Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Resilience Talk with Brad Neufeld. So glad to have you here today. You know, a lot of times here on Resilience Talk Network, we definitely consistently talk about challenges and the challenges that we face in our life. And we also talk about how to not look at these challenges as punishments, but to look at them as learning opportunities. And so our guest today is awesome. She has a wonderful story that she would like to tell the world, and we're so looking forward to that. Amber Bride is going to tell us her story today. But when it comes to overcoming these challenges of life, some of us, well, we all have our own unique journeys, and we know that. And so what's going to be good for one person is not necessarily going to be good for another. But what we do have in common is how we look at these challenges. We can let them destroy us and just have a bad attitude about it and say, you know what, to heck with all of it. I'm just going to go do what I want and destroy our lives. Or we can stop and say, you know what, maybe I'm learning something here. Maybe my higher power is teaching me something, and I can use this knowledge that I'm going through to help others. Because as you know, when you help others, that's when you get your greatest victories in life, and that's where you feel your greatest joys. It's all about relationships, guys. But we're going to jump right into it. Amber is one of the ones who has chosen the latter, to take her challenges and say, you know what, I've been through a lot, and it's time to do what I can to help others. How you doing, Amber?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Good. Well, I was very impressed with when you sent me over your story. I liked how you started it out with my challenges began at birth.
Yes.
Okay, not many people say that. So let's discuss that. What do you mean by that?
The biggest part, so my mother was an addict as well. Mm-hmm. Used while she was pregnant with me. So I was born addicted in the NICU. And then I was born on an Air Force base, right?
Wow.
But unfortunately, my father was also an addict, so he got caught using while I was in the NICU, got dishonorably discharged. So then that started the journey of being homeless with my parents.
So your whole family was just homeless?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Trap houses and on the streets and all that goes into that. I was very sick, obviously, like as a child, and when you're homeless and you're, living that lifestyle, going to the doctor isn't a priority. And then at the age of 4, my parents asked Grandma to babysit. They were going to go get a job and then just never returned.
No notice at all.
No.
They just, we've got her safe with Grandma, we're gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that kind of started a different journey. My grandma took me in. It was very manipulative.
Meaning like hard iron fist type of.
Well, and she had me afraid of my parents, right? Like she was the saint that was doing this kind gesture, and the world should know how wonderful she is because she's taking on her son's child. But her perception of life was very warped, kind of. So
warped, okay.
It was, I would get dressed up, in the dresses, and any business event, it was like, here's my granddaughter, right? It was like I was put on show to have that, people to feel sorry for her. Like, you shouldn't have to do this, and you're so wonderful to do this.
And did you notice what was happening when you were young, or you were just so young that you didn't care? And
at first, it was kind of fun, right? I mean, what girl doesn't like getting her hair done and, like, the big frilly dresses and the lace socks? And when I was 7, though, that's when the perception of body image came into play. It was, the world doesn't accept people that are of this size. So if you want to be successful, and if you want to be loved, and if you want to be, accepted regardless, you never leave the house undone, and you need to be this size, right? You need to be skinny. So then it was constantly chasing that approval of her, right? Like all the things, private school, soccer, ballet, which now, you know, I look back, I'm very grateful for what she gave me. But in the end, like, she wasn't there. You know, she would send in an employee or a driver or the maid or someone, right, to pick me up. So I was doing all these things and I was chasing all these things. And then we'd get, like, our soccer team pictures or the swim pictures. And it was like, don't you wish you could be skinny like that person? Wouldn't you be happier if you were that way? Right? It wasn't, hey, good job, you guys won the medal. It was, you're fat compared to your friends.
Oh, geez. And I've seen that a lot with the work I've done with families over the years where that's happened. It almost sounds like you had a Hollywood upbringing. Yeah. When I say that, I don't know how it is, and I obviously don't want to judge people and all that. But a lot of times when I see Hollywood celebrities and stuff, and they have children, and they talk about how they love being a parent, then they parade their kids around. Yeah. But then I've actually worked with some of those kids, and they said basically similar to what you said. They're on show and everything is great, but then after that it's who's actually raising them? The nannies, the butler, the drivers, everything.
And there was a lot of downtime, and I think the older I got, right, the more questions I had. Mm-hmm. Like, well, who are my parents? Mm-hmm. Like, why don't you have any pictures of me as a baby? Why don't you have any pictures of my parents? Mm-hmm. Like, what is that, right? And it was, we don't talk about that. Be
so
grateful
they just
for
totally
what you
wanted
have.
You to erase everything.
And you know, and it was the more pushback, right? The older I got, and then I would push back, like, well, I'm grateful for you, but you're my grandma. You're not my mom. Like, I want to know, right? You go to school and they give you these projects of, like, your family trees and things. Like, I want to know. You don't need to know.
Okay, but that's not going to stop me from wanting to know.
Yeah. So, and then I was like, I wish we could have family dinner. Like, why don't we have family dinner? Like, we're all in the same house, but, like, you know, Grandpa's in the study and you're here and I'm, you know, and so it became a kind of tug of war with that. And then I came home. I was 11. Came home from shopping with my aunt for my new uniform, right? The new semester.
For a new school, or for your school that you're going to.
And Grandma had all my stuff packed, and she said, you want to know what it's like to live with a family? I have it set up. We're leaving tonight. And
okay.
I was like, well, I can't say goodbye. She's like, no, we're leaving now. So she had sent me off with Grandma so she could get all my stuff. And then off we went to Oregon. Mm-hmm. So that kind of started the journey of from 11 to 17, where...
So when you say a new family, so you're talking a program of some type, or?
Well, it was my grandpa's, like, second cousin or something.
Gotcha.
The first place was a family place. She was paying them. They had some financial hardships. Okay. So she swooped in and was like, I'll take care of this if you'll take care of her.
Gotcha.
But you need to have her do X, Y, and Z for you to get this money. So then it became like the modern day Cinderella, right? I lost all my belongings. Their kids got it. I was doing all the yard work and all of the housework and not eating with the family and
not cleaning the chimney, right?
There was no chimney. There was no chimney. No. You know, and so I remember being up, and that's kind of also my journey of, like, self-harm started, right? It wasn't necessarily intentional. It was maybe if I hurt myself enough or I get sick, like, I can just take a break.
Do you think it was deliberate, or was it just something that you just did and not understanding? Did you actually make the decision, you know what, I'm going to hurt myself and I'm going to show them what manipulation's like, if that makes sense?
The first time it was an accident. I was cleaning the oven, but I didn't have gloves. So the oven cleaner got on my arm and then started, like, burning.
Oh yeah. Right.
And the father of the home, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, like, let's get that cleaned off, right?
Yeah.
And then I was able to, like, take a break.
Okay, makes sense.
And so then it was like, oh, well, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. And so then it was like, that slowly, like, how can I, Oregon summer, it's hot and it's humid, and I'm
absolutely.
out there, like, pulling crabgrass between the rose bushes, and, like, no. So it was like, how can
Getting hurt was much easier. Hurting yourself.
Hurting myself was much easier than, a 12-hour day of manual labor to just have nothing to show for it. And, it wasn't that it was a family affair of like, let's get the yard work done. It's Amber, go out, do the yard work. And then they eventually were like, we can't do this anymore. And then Grandma was not happy with that. So it was like, I don't know, 4 a.m, I had transports there.
Jeez.
We're going to move you.
So they just picked you up and
didn't
know where you were going.
No. So then it was a group home, and that was an experience.
Well, when you first arrived, if you don't mind me asking, when you first arrived, what were your thoughts? Were you just feeling totally abandoned? Were you angry? Did you want revenge? I mean, what was going through your mind?
That moment, it was more, it really started setting in that, like, I wasn't enough.
Okay.
Right? It didn't matter. I was doing all the things I was asked. I wasn't complaining. Right? I never complained. I would cry in bed, at night, but I was very, okay, what else do you need me to do? Okay, right? Because I wanted my grandma to see, like, I do appreciate you, and I do love you.
So you were hoping to go back to your grandma's to earn your way back to grandma's.
So I felt like if I do what's asked, that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And when I showed up and I looked around and I was like, where am I? And then it became real. And then it set in, like, I really am not enough. So, like, I've got to do more. I've got to figure out what it is about me that is being rejected.
So, Amber, let me ask you this. So here you are at this group home, and you had these questions going on in your mind. Did you ask your therapist? I'm assuming you had them at the time.
Yeah.
Did you ask them about this?
Not at first. No. Mm-hmm. It was, I got brought in and I got introduced to my house. Right? It was a campus that had multiple houses. It was co-ed. And, and I started hearing the heckles, right, from people like, oh, she's a rich kid. She's a private pay.
Oh,
because the majority of the people there were from, like, Chicago and New York, and they were state placed for violent, like, adult crimes. And I'm this kid that, and so it was, I didn't realize that was what I was necessarily feeling, or that there was something wrong with it. Right? I had been told at a young age that the perception of life and to be loved and to be accepted, you had these expectations. So I was more like, okay, what are the rules? What do I need to do so that I can get back? So then I became like the star student, right?
Yes.
They were like, she's doing amazing.
She's doing great. She's made some good choices now.
Yeah.
Making good choices.
And Grandma would come to family therapy and she's this and she's that. And I'm like, okay. And I would just take it because I felt like that's what was appropriate. Or
your easiest way home.
Yeah.
Acting the part.
And then there were moments where my peers would be like, why do you let her, like, treat you that way? Like, she is a tool, and, like, because she would come in with her Lexus, and it's, like, gold-plated, and they're like, is she asking to be robbed? Does she know, like, do you want us to rob her car? I'm like, no, So then it was, like, my peers starting to advocate and starting to bring up those questions. So then that's when I started asking my therapist, like, well, what is it about me, like, that is, like, what am I doing wrong? Yeah. Why is everyone leaving? Like, what is it that I need to do? Yes. Like, when is it going to be enough? Mm-hmm. And I remember in that moment having that conversation with him and him being like, you're enough. You just need a family that wants to love you. He's like, you don't belong here. Like, this isn't, he's like, I love that you're here and I love the work that we do. He's like, but this is not the place for you. Like, you just need, like, someone to love you.
Did that, like, sting? I'm trying to think of a better word. I mean,
yeah,
what was going on within you?
I had never heard it. I had never heard anyone say, like, you just need someone to love you. Because my perception was all along that was love. That's all I knew. And I cried and I cried and I cried and, you know, and I said, so I'm never going to go home? Is that what you're telling me? And he's like, I'm not saying that, but there's work to do. And he's like, so we've got to have this conversation with your grandma. And then, you know, she missed a couple family therapies. She was busy with work or traveling or, you know. And so we just had a video conference. And my therapist called her out.
They had those back then?
Yeah.
No, I was kidding. Well, you're young.
Yeah.
So.
And, well, not video, but like, you know.
Conference calls.
Conference call.
Yeah.
And he called her out. And he said, like, this is not the right place. I want to transition her into, like, an independent living type thing where she can go to regular school and, you know, this and that. And my grandma did not appreciate that. The next day, my therapist pulled me out of school and said, your grandma will be here in a couple hours to pick you up, and she is taking you somewhere else. I said, okay.
My gosh, Amber.
So off to the next place I go. I pretended to sleep the whole time, right? I was in Provo at the time, and then I was going to St. George to a foster home. Okay. So we pull up in this house. There's, like, no grass. It's the desert. And there's, like, little kids running around everywhere. And I was like, what in the actual, like, where am I at now? Like, what are we doing now, Grandma? And it was the same thing, right? So I sat there and she persecuted me. I was a horrible child and I was all these things. And I had to sit there and the foster mom's like, we can work on that. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I have to start over again?
Jeez.
And so in those moments, like the feeling of not being enough just was, every day I felt that. Every day it was like, okay, like I need to do more and I need to do more and I need to be perfect, right? And in reality, like today, I know that's not even...
It's not possible.
Right?
It's
not attainable. And I remember, you know, we went to try to get me enrolled into school. And she didn't have guardianship papers for me. She had no way to prove that she was my grandma.
Oh, wow.
But, like, back then, you know, she could just call the bishop. Yeah. The bishop was like, oh, yeah, she's been raising her. And so they took that. And so then, you know, at this point, though, I'm, like, rebellious teenager and I'm mad.
So what age are you at here? 16,
so I'm, like,
17?
15.
15?
Yeah, 15, 16. So I'm mad now, right? There was a piece of me that was like, I'm not enough, but then I was also mad. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't you just leave me be? Like, I had friends there, and I don't want to do this again. I don't want to have to start over. And then in that home, my foster dad was one of the most amazing people, right? Like, he didn't buy the facade that my grandma was painting, right? I remember the first night sitting there and I was crying and I was mad and I was all the things. And he said, tell me about yourself.
Was that like a breath of fresh air?
Yeah, I was like, oh, like someone sees me.
And did it feel weird? Was it a feeling of, do I want to trust this person because everybody else has let me down?
There was resistance too, right? Like, yeah. I remember sitting there and he felt warm and he felt loving. But to me, I was like, if I see the wrong thing, this is going to be over, right? So I would sit there and there was lots of silence. And I was very particular with my words, right? And it was very much like, I love my grandma and I'm so grateful for all the things and very mindful of those things. And I remember, you know, at the end of it, he said, well, when you're ready to really let me know what's going on, know that I'm here and there's no judgment.
Nice.
And I said,
good man.
And I said, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And walked off. and it kind of stuck with me. And then they worked the system to let me stay there, right? I acted up, I'd snuck out with one of the girls and to go meet boys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And of course they had to call my grandma, and initially my grandma was like, I'm pulling her. You can't handle her. I told you. And they were like, no, these are our consequences. And then it kind of, they just fed that, right? We had a conversation of like, we don't want to see you leave. We love you. Mm-hmm. So then it was kind of doctoring. She's not doing very good in school, or she's kind of had some attitude with the girls that she's living with, right? Because they knew if they were saying how it was really doing, that it was, she's manipulating you, you don't have the capacity to take care of her, and I would be gone. And that was until I was 17. And then it was, you're a waste of money. You're never coming home. You just don't get it. I'm not paying. And then I was homeless. Because in the contract that she had, I couldn't stay with them or she was going to go after their license.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was their livelihood.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I said, it's okay. Like, I don't blame you guys. I know that it's her, and I'll figure it out. And then that is when I, was drinking and partying and doing all the things with the boys. And it was more of, if I was in those situations and environments, I always had somewhere to sleep. Right?
And now you didn't.
Yeah. And so it was like, if I go to the party, like, of course I can crash there.
Yeah.
And if I hang out with this boy, or if I do that, right, like, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. So I did that, and then I met my first ex-husband.
Okay. So husband number one.
Husband number one.
But you were still very young at this time, right?
Yeah, I was, 18.
18?
Well, no, so I was almost before my 18th birthday, because I celebrated my 18th birthday with him.
Okay.
We meet at a spring break party, right? It's a week long of drinking and partying, and the cool thing about it is he was just my friend, right? Like, we were friends, and we didn't do anything, and he was like, I've never seen a girl be able to drink like this. And so there was like a moment of like, oh, I've accomplished something.
Yeah, I now have
right?
this
Like,
stigma.
I can drink with the best of them.
Yeah.
I have made it in life, right?
Wow.
And the friend I was staying with, her dad was a truck driver, and he was supposed to be gone for like a few more weeks. Well, he had called and said, hey, like, my truck broke, like, I'm coming home. And I was like, where am I supposed to go? Like, I don't know where to go. He overheard the conversation and went to his grandparents and was like, hey, can my friend come stay with us? She has nowhere to be, or nowhere to live.
Nowhere to live.
And so they said, sure, as long as she helps around the house. And, so I stayed there for, it was like 3 weeks, and then his grandpa died. And then his grandma was like, God brought you to us, and we never would have, because I was cooking, and I was, it was sad for me, but it wasn't devastating because I hadn't been around long enough. Yeah. So, right, so I could make sure that people were eating and kind of being that go-between. And so then that started the journey. We went to Denver, and we went to Montana for his funeral. And in that moment, it was like, that's when we started dating. And then we moved to California, and we're living the life, right? We had a house, and we had cars, and we were working, and 2 years later, I'm pregnant with my daughter, and this is my whole life. I told you, Grandma, like, I could do it.
I can do it. I have a family now. And...
Yeah. And then things just, he lost his job, and then we went back to St. George. And that kind of started the downfall for us. Okay.
Because of your family members there?
Well, his family, he started using, and it got real ugly, right? And so it became a very toxic thing. But I still stayed, right? I stayed in it because I was like, you don't give up on the people that you love. You just don't.
Yeah.
I know what that feels like, and I will never be that person.
Okay.
And when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, I made the conscious decision. I am going to do everything different. We're going to have Christmas, and we're going to have these traditions, and we're going to have all the things.
Everything you didn't have.
You know, everything I didn't have. And I don't have anybody dictating it because I don't even know what that looks like. So I get to decide, and I get to say, and I will never be the person that causes harm or walks out on someone or gives up on someone. I'm just not going to do it. And then it just got worse. And it became where it was, I need to leave. I may not get out. Like, this is going to end very bad for the both of us and the kids involved. And at the time, I didn't know I was pregnant with Caden, my son, my oldest son. And I found out after. We went down for a graduation. His sister was graduating, and while I was there, his sister was like, I was saying some stuff, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. And I said, absolutely not. There's no way no. Mm-mm. So I took a test, and I was like, oh, I'm pregnant.
Oh.
So I went to his mom, and I was like, well, so I know you said I could stay, like me and Destiny could stay with you. That's my daughter.
Yes.
You know, new development. I'm pregnant. She's like, well, it doesn't change anything for me, but does it change something for you? And I said, not really.
Okay.
I think that there needs to be some separation. I think we need to separate, and he needs to go back to St. George and handle the things that, you know, he had gotten into some trouble. And I said, I think he needs to handle that on his own and show that he wants it, and then we can talk about me going back. Right? So it was like, I love you, and I'm not leaving you, and I'm not giving up on you. We just need some space.
Yes.
And that fizzled quick, you know.
When you say fizzled, what is...
He found someone else, and they got married, and so that was that. And but then when I was pregnant with my son, I was having complications. You know, and so I decided to go back to St. George, so I could be closer. Like, his grandma was there, and his dad, and he was there, and so I was like, if something happens, I need to be somewhere where they can help take care of Destiny. Like, I don't have any family. I don't really have any friends, right? Because my whole life had been us. And so I made the conscious decision to, I'm going to forgive you. It's whatever is in the past, it's in the past. I just need my kids to have their dad. That was the number one priority. That was the thing that was the most important to me, regardless of anything else. And so that kind of started that, you know, we have one Christmas, we have one Thanksgiving, one birthday. I'm not sitting alone and missing out because we can't be adults. And we're going to bring whatever into the mix.
Well, good for you, though. I just want to say that. Good for you for wanting that consistency. And knowing the kids need that.
And, I mean, some of it, too, was a codependency thing, right? There was a part of me that was like, if I can show him what he's missing, and if I can be this person, and if I can, you know, lose weight, and if I can do all these things, right, maybe he'll want me back. So then I have my son. He is 3 months early. I was barely 27 weeks. And they didn't know if they were going to be able to keep him in St. George, because at the time, right, they only had the one tiny hospital.
Right.
And fortunately, Caden cried for like half a second before his lungs collapsed. So they were able to keep him there. He was in the NICU for about a month and a half. I had him November 1st, and he came home like the week of Christmas.
Okay.
So then it became, this is a lot more than than I signed up for, right? Like, I'm working full-time graveyards, and I have my daughter, and now I have a son who's going to be coming home with a heart monitor and an oxygen tank and, you know, all these things, and I don't know what this looks like. I don't know if I can measure up. And so I just kind of dove in and was like, hey, like, I'm just going to do what I can, to the best that I can. And the last time I'd reached out to my grandma was in this moment. I reached out to her and I said, hey, he's going to come home from the hospital, but I need to be able to have my own apartment. I can't be where there's cigarette smoke because he's coming home with oxygen and all these things. I'm like $200 shy of being able to get into this apartment. Will you loan me the money as a business transaction?
Yeah.
Charge me interest, whatever you need. And so it was like, let's meet for lunch. So I go, and the conversation was, well, you let yourself go, and you got fat. That's why he left. You did this. I told you you would be your mom, right? All these things. And I'm like sitting there at Chuckarama, and I just walked into a trap.
Yeah.
Right? But then I looked at it, right? I looked at his wife, and his wife was skinny. And so I was like, I did do this. This is my fault. I destroyed my family. So I left and I sat with that and I carried that, and I was mad at her because she never had the intention to help me. It was that she just wanted to be right. And so then I did a little bit of work, and I thought I was over him, and that's when I met my youngest son's dad, my second ex-husband.
Okay.
So
husband number two.
Husband number two. And things were great, right? It was fun. It was easy. But then there were some like red flags, and I was like, oh, nope, I'm not doing this again, you know? So I broke it off, and I was like, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. Like, I don't have the capacity to do this. And so we split, and a few months later, I found out I was pregnant. I was on birth control. I didn't even think that was possible.
Right.
And so then now I have to have that call, right? I have to have that conversation of, hey, so I'm pregnant. And he was like, well, is it mine? I'm like, of course it's yours.
Of course it's yours.
Like, you know. And then it was, well, see, this is a sign, like, we're supposed to be together. And it was like, no, like, I didn't stay with someone because of kids. And I don't know that I'm going to be with someone because of kids.
Right.
But then he went on, like, showing me that, you know, he did the work, right? He paid child support. He had a job, like, all the things. And so then we got married and, you know, lived what I thought healthy life. And then I can't really identify, like, the moment, but it was somewhere there was a detach.
Oh, okay.
So then it was like we weren't communicating as well, and we were always fighting, and we would separate and we would get back together, and we would do counseling and we would try all the things.
Yeah.
But ultimately it was, we became roommates. Right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, at 34, that was the final straw of, you know, he was like, I want out. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to be married. I'm just over it. And, you know, and I had a back injury a few years prior. So I was taking pain pills. I mean, as prescribed,
so
right? So
literally at this time, you probably just felt like everything I've ever done.
Yeah.
You were getting to the point of I'm done.
You know, and so I just, in that moment, I was like, I am the common denominator. Like, I am the natural disaster, and I am wreaking havoc. And I'm definitely not worthy, and I'm definitely not enough. I can't make these things work, and now I have 3 kids, and I can't measure up.
Wow. Well, Amber, let's take a quick break here, because so I just wow. There's just a lot here. And I'm feeling the heaviness of what I'm just putting myself in your shoes there going, you're here, you're in that moment going, no matter what I do, I can't make things work. And it just, let's explore that a little bit more when we come back from the break, if that's all right.
Yep.
And so then I'm interested to see when you decided to, you know what, I'm done being that way. Now I'm the new me.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's do that. We're going to take a quick break here. Our guest today is Amber Bride. She's telling us her story of how she's had to overcome many challenges in life. A lot of good stuff here, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Do you know someone who's gambling with death due to an addiction? Do you know someone whose life is being turned upside down due to a loved one that's battling with addiction? Hi, I'm Al Richards. I am the host of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I started the podcast due to my wife's battle with alcohol. Let's just say I became addicted to her addiction. Our podcast is helping people understand a little more about those who have battled addiction and those who are hurting from their addiction. Through raw vulnerability, we share stories that help uncover the root causes of addiction. Shame felt on both sides, matter of the conscious and subconscious mind, continued beliefs, and often confusing paths of recovery. We collaborate with real people and their stories, as well as licensed professionals, to help our audience gain a better understanding of addiction. You can find us on Resilience Talk Network. You can also find us on Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. That's Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up the Other Side of Addiction podcast.
And welcome back. Our guest today, Amber Bride, is sharing her story with us of all the challenges she's had to overcome. And we left off at the end of just before the break there, we were discussing how you were on your second marriage and you had just reached a point where you'd had it. You were done.
Yes.
Now, what was at that moment there? Just talk about what was going. Did you feel lost? Was there anger? All of the above. I mean, what emotions were just? I bet they were just.
Yeah.
All over the place.
I would say if it was any emotion you could feel, I was feeling it. Right. I again was abandoned. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, I wasn't enough. I wasn't worthy. And at the time, like, I'd gained some weight, so then there was, I got fat. I'm not attractive, like, I'm not appealing, and I broke my family, right? It was all an internal of me.
Right.
And I was mad, and I was hurt, right? Because it was like, I'm just over it, and I'm just done. I don't want to do it anymore, right? And so it was like, and you hear a lot when the fight is done, right? The emotion, there's no more emotion, right? Like, at least if you were screaming and fighting, like, there's something.
Yeah.
But just to have it be, nope, I'm done, and to be able to walk away, then I don't know, I just was, and I was mad at God, right? I was like, I did all the right things. I was a good baby's mom. I was a good mom. I was a good wife. I showed up for my kids. Like, I had a job, and I was going to church, and I was doing all these things. And how is it not enough? Right? Like, right. I am making a conscious decision to not be my parents, and to not do these things, and to make sure my kids feel loved, and to make sure that I'm presenting this life, and to barely survive. Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of was. It was like, this is just, no. Like, I'm over this, and I'm done, and I kind of, I didn't necessarily know what I needed. I just knew that I didn't want to do it anymore, right? My will to live, like, I lost my own internal fight of, like, pushing through, because what's the point?
Right.
In my mind, it was like, what's the point? They're all going to leave. Like,
no matter what I do, it's not
I am the natural disaster, and I am causing havoc, and I am causing harm, and I am hurting my kids, and I can't hold it together, and so my grandma was right at some point, and, like, I am, like, the defective one that is just, throw out with the trash, right? And that was my mindset. Like, that was really, I just was done. And then that night, I, did a lot of my pain pills.
Was it an attempt to end your life, or?
I don't really know if it was necessarily in that moment that I was consciously like, I'm going to do this in my life, but I also was, I don't really care if I wake up or I don't.
Gotcha.
But I know that I don't want to feel this, this is too much. Yeah. And then I discovered what, withdrawing was, and I was super sick. And I, had someone that was staying with me. I was trying to help her out of a situation, and that's when I was introduced to heroin. And it was, 2 hits, and I was like, this is the missing piece.
So you actually felt that at that moment?
Yeah. Like, my second hit, and then all of a sudden it was like calm, right? It was like the seas were calm, like my mind was quiet, my body didn't hurt. I wasn't anything. And I felt like I could breathe normal. And so for me, it was like, I should have been doing this all along.
Oh, wow.
I would have been way more successful, like, right? If I didn't have,
but for the record, I'm glad you didn't.
Yes. But in that moment, I remember being like, I don't know what that is, but that is the missing piece.
Because of the feeling you had.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like I was
just
confident.
The peace, right? Because before that, I was wound so tight, right? If you're constantly chasing perfection, and you're constantly chasing these things, like, I was constantly angry, like, I would lose my temper quick, and one simple thing would fall apart, and it would be ruined, right? I mean, I forgot a serving spoon at one of the kids' birthday parties, and someone had to go to the store, and so then they weren't there when everybody got there, and it was like, I ruined it, and it was like, nobody cares. Like, you care, but nobody cares.
Nobody else,
and so there was...
And there's truth to that.
Yeah, and so there was such a high expectation and perfection that I was chasing, that I was kind of a bear you know, I look back and I'm like, oh, bless all of your hearts, you know?
Yeah.
But that was where, in that moment, I was just like, well, hello, good friend.
Yeah.
We're going to go about this together.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, my Christian's dad was like, came and got him because he could tell I wasn't doing well. And then the next day, Dustin, Caden's dad, came in and said, so, you know, you've always been there for me. You've always helped me out, and I'm kind of at a better position than you are. So I'm going to take the kids to eliminate your stress.
Okay.
Right? Well, first I was like, who are you to say that I'm not doing well? Like, come on now. Like, and so then I was mad. And then I was even madder at Christian's dad, right? Because then I was like, how dare you have that conversation with him and take my kids? Like, who's saying I'm not a good mom? Like, are you all crazy? And then I had to sit alone in my house, and for the first time in my life, I was alone. I didn't have my kids. I didn't have my husband. I was alone. And I remember just being like, I really did it. Like, I am my mom. Like, I spent so much of my life trying to not be her. And for what?
Yeah.
2 failed, you know, relationships. I don't have my kids. I'm going to lose my house, right? Because I wasn't working and behind on your payments, and that's what happens. And I didn't, you know, and it was like, this is it. And I just, but I also didn't have the fight anymore. I was so exhausted. I was so exhausted from constantly trying to measure up. And I was just like, well, you're not going to measure up. And this is what you were destined to be and to do. So you might as well just, you know, run it out until it runs out.
Right.
So then I became very stuck in that. Like, you know, I went down the rabbit hole and I just didn't really care, right? I mean, I didn't care who was coming over or what was going on or what was happening, or I could see it and I was like, that probably shouldn't be happening, but whatever, you know, and then I was, you know, selling and all of the very, like, dangerous.
I call it survival mode.
Yeah. I mean, very dangerous behaviors.
Yeah.
I ended up losing my house and I was, you know, and in those moments, right, you call and you're like sitting on the curb and I'm like, they are here and they're throwing all my stuff in the parking, like, and, you know, people that are in working and that type of society, like, they have jobs and they have lives and they can't just be like, hey, let me come get you, right? So I got a lot of, well, I could be there in a couple hours
and,
or, you know, and I'm like, a couple hours?
Yeah, I need you right now.
Like, I need right now. And so then it was, well, I know someone that I could call. And that's what
brought
kind
up
of
some triggers probably.
Yeah, so it kind of opened that door of, I have no value and no worth, and I'm just an object, and I will do whatever I need to do to survive because I can't do this. And then I was surrounded by that toxic environment, right? I'm the naive girl, because I was naive, right? Like, I was very protected from the lifestyle and from what it really was. So now I'm the naive girl that looks normal but has a driver's license and these things, right? So now I'm like renting the cars and I'm renting the hotel rooms and I am, you know, all the things. And to me, I was just surviving and for once, and I remember there was a moment where, I mean, I had lost a ton of weight. I was probably a size 5. Like,
wow.
I mean, I was super tiny and but I had money and I was surrounded by people.
Yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, my grandma was right. All I had to do was get skinny.
All you had to do is get, wow.
I'm skinny and, like, look at what I have. Mm-hmm. Look at all the money. Look at all the people. Look at, like, the prestige of, right? I didn't see any negative aspect in it, except her voice telling me, you've arrived, and all it took was you to get skinny. So then I stayed stuck, right? Because, well, this is the life.
And I have to stay skinny.
And I have to stay skinny.
What I'm doing
and I
right
have
now.
to stay doing what I'm doing. And
did you know it was destructive, or hadn't crossed your mind?
I mean, there were some moments where it was like every time I would start coming down, mm-hmm. right, when it would start wearing off, it got harder and harder for me to be able to look at myself in the mirror, because all I could see was my mom. Right? Like, I looked at that person and I said, and I hated her. Mm-hmm. Like, and it was suffocating, because at that moment my kids were 14, 13, and 11. Mm-hmm. Who does that? I know exactly what they're feeling. I lived that. So now I'm doing to my children what I swore I would never do. But I still didn't feel worthy and enough to be able to break free of it. I didn't even know what that looked like. And there was, like, the embarrassment of it, right? Because when people found out, they were like, oh my gosh, of all people, like, people would have bet their lives that I never would have done drugs because I was so adamant about that. Mm-hmm. So then it was like, oh, like, she's fallen and the safety net's gone, and my daughter hated me, and mm-hmm. my boys were broken, and I just was like, so I just stayed very numb because mm-hmm. it was the only way I was going to be able to make it through another day. Yeah. Right.
So how long did this continue on for?
For about 4 years.
Okay.
Because I started at 34 and I went into treatment at 38.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And when did you make the decision to go into treatment?
Well, I didn't really make the decision.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question. What happened in your life that? Because usually it's usually some outside forces when we make that decision. Yes. That's a common thing I see with addiction out there. And so, at what point? Was there a person in your life? What was it that made you go, all right, I've got to do something? Or was it the hammer of, if you don't?
So my last stretch, right, and I had tried a few times before, like little bouts.
Gotcha.
But then but I didn't do any work, right? So this last time, I was on probation, mm-hmm. and I was supposed to be doing IOP. Okay. Right? So I had
intensive outpatient treatment for those of you who wonder what IOP is.
Yeah. And I had, she was like my case manager at the time. I absolutely love her. And she would, have these conversations with me of like, I just wish that you could see who I see. Like, you're so beautiful and you're so kind and you deserve so much more than this. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm here.
That's just the jargon they use. Yeah.
And I didn't believe any of it, right? I was like, what? I don't even know why you're saying this. Like, are you, like, there's an alternative motive or whatever. Yeah. And I was working and all the things, right? And so I was like, well, I'm being productive and I'm getting like, and I even got like, I was moved up to the assistant manager. We were talking about me having my own store. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this is not that bad. I really have it figured out. And then I was living out of my car, right? I'm like keeping it from everybody. So it's this double life of I'm an assistant manager and I'm going to be a manager and have a store. And then I am, showering at friends' houses or public bathrooms or
truck stops.
I've
done that
or,
before.
And I'm living out of my car. Like, this is crazy. Yeah. I had an overdose. It was the really bad winter of St. George, and it was like a blizzard. It was like Salt Lake winter, right? Mm-hmm. And so I knew, like, it's going to be a rough night. Yeah. I don't want to get caught with anything. I'm going to go do the last of what I have, and I'm going to layer up to make it through the night. I've got to work at 7 a.m. I've just got to make it through the night.
Yeah.
And I went to go do that, and a few hours had passed, and I was on the floor, and I like couldn't see, and my ears were ringing, and I couldn't. I kept trying to wake up to call, right? I had all these voice messages, and, you know, I could hear my kids being like, Mom, you were supposed to bring us food hours ago. What are you doing? Like, you know, right? But it was like I couldn't. I kept nodding back out, and I was able to call someone, and I said, I need help. Can you make it down to this? It was like a public bathroom at the end of, you know, where like the Dixie Convention Center is.
Right.
And I said, I don't know what's on the other side of it. So, like, if there's cops on the other side, just call my phone, and I'll know that I just need to come out, and, like, game over.
Yeah.
You know, if not, like, knock, I'll come out. And so then I tried to pull it together, right? I tried to sleep it off for a couple hours before I had to go to work because I was covering for my boss. And I showed up, and then I ended up like falling asleep in the walk-in cooler.
Oh, wow.
and it was the Subway that was inside Walmart, right?
Yes.
So the Walmart person calls my boss.
And I know exactly where you're talking about.
So the Walmart manager calls my boss and is like, is someone going to come open Subway? So then he calls me, and I'm like, oh, I'm here. And I totally like played it off. I was like frantic. I'm like, crap.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to hurry and open it, and then he ends up showing up, and he's like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just kind of feeling under the weather, right? And obviously I've talked to him since, and he knew, but he was like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, I'm good. I've got it.
Yeah.
That night I had to go to class, and my case manager's like, we need to finish doing your intake. Like, we need a UA. I'm like,
oh boy.
oy.
Yes.
So I go in her office, and I'm bawling, and I'm like, well, it's gonna be dirty. This is, you know, like, this is what's happening. This is what's been happening. But I don't want to go to jail. Right? Like, I do have my job, and I have, like, my kids are talking to me, and I don't want to lose everything because I made a mistake. And she's like, well, I will advocate for you.
Yes.
But you need to call your probation officer. You need to tell him, and you need to be honest with him. But I will advocate for you.
Okay.
So what I heard was, I'm not going to jail. I got out of it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Call my PO. He's like, okay, well, just, you know, come to your scheduled appointment, which was, I don't know, like 5 days away or something. There was some time in there. So then again, in my brain was like,
okay, I got through it.
I
skated it again.
And I remember, like, you know, and so during my addiction, though, like, my second ex, him and I kind of reconnected. He had thrown himself in to try to help pull me out. So at this moment, we're together again, right? And so I remember having the conversation, being like, we need to get Suboxone. We need to do something.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot go. Like, he's going to UA me. I know I'm getting UA'd.
Yeah.
But then it was, well, I don't want to be sick. And then I kept, like, you know, the lies I would tell myself of, like, well, maybe not. Like, he already knows that I screwed up. So, like, it'll be fine, you know. So I go into the office, and I don't take anything with me, right? Because I'm like, I'm probably not coming out of this.
Yeah.
But wait anyways, right?
Yeah.
And we're up there, and I sit down, and the first question he asked me, are you going to pass this UA? I said, nope.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, stand up. We're going for a walk.
Oh, man.
You know, and in St. George, right, you got, like, AP&P here, and there's a sidewalk that connects AP&P and the jail.
Jail, right.
So I'm like,
the walk.
man, like, and so then I was super mad, right? She said she was going to advocate for me. Like, you said, like, you know, you, all these things. And so I was so mad. Not that it was like, I didn't do anything wrong. All of you were liars and threw me to the wolves. And he's like, no, that's not what's happening. Like, I'm just going to give you a 72-hour hold. And, you know, we'll go from there.
Okay.
Right? Because obviously it was a violation.
Right.
So I go in, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, they do that all the time. They throw you in here to dry you out. And so I'm thinking, oh, okay. Like, 72 hours is nothing.
Yeah.
counting down the hours. That morning, I'm asking
What time do I get out?
I said, hey, like, there's no warrants that have popped up, right? Like, I'm still going to get out at this time. And they're like, as far as we know. So then lunch comes, and they're like, Miss Bride.
Oh, boy.
A warrant has popped up, and you have to see the judge. So you're on a hold. And I was like, these liars, right?
Yes.
Like, I can't trust anyone. No one has my back.
Yeah.
This is bullshit. I never should have been honest. I should have just taken my chances. Then I go to court, right? And it's like I can't get through to him. I can't get through to my PO. I can't get through to the case manager. I can't get through to anybody. We go to court. Nobody's there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is... I was like, all of the feelings of just like, well, I'm not good enough. And I'm not worth it. Like, they couldn't worth... like, I'm not worth them showing up to just say something on behalf of me. I should have known better. What was I thinking, having hope that, like, there was people out there that really cared and had my back? Here I am. Here we go again.
Yeah.
And then I sat in that for a little bit. And initially, right, they wanted to throw the book at me. They were like, we want you to do 6 months.
Oh, gosh.
And then we want you to, do inpatient treatment, and then revoke and restart, and then do, like, DORA, which is APP's version of drug court.
Right.
And I'm like, for a dirty UA that I told on myself for?
Right.
Like, no, that's not happening. And my lawyer was like, we're not doing that. He's like, I don't understand why they're being so severe with this consequence. So then he petitioned. He's like, well, are you open to therapy and or to treatment? And initially I was like, is it going to get me out?
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever I got to do to get out.
Yep.
And he was like, yeah. And so I go back to the block, right? And I'm talking to everybody, and they're like, yeah, you really should.
Yeah.
Like, you'll get out. And initially I was looking at going to Steps in St. George.
Okay.
Right? Because it's, it's co-ed. It's close to my husband. It's close to my kids. Right?
Right.
So, like, I could do that. Not a big deal. Like, I've been doing this my whole life, right? Like, therapy and all of it, like, easy. But then I sat there, right? And I needed like $6.06 for my insurance.
Yes.
To be able to go to treatment.
Yes.
And, like, no one could come up with it.
Yeah.
And we kept missing the deadline. So then it was like, you got to sit another month.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because when you get insurance to the marketplace, if it's not done by a certain time to take effect by the 1st. Absolutely. You have to wait again.
Wait again, yep.
So I'm like, and then at that point, I was mad at the world. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to hear it. I was pissed off. Like, you're a liar. Like, you don't care about me. I'm not enough. I'm in this alone. Right? Because my kids were upset, rightfully so. And I had, built this facade. And so I said, screw it. Like, signed up for the RDAP program. I'll just do my time. 6 months, revoke, restart, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, don't call me. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. Right? And I had a friend that was in with me, and she said, look, like, I'm getting out, and I promise you, I'm gonna pay, and I'm gonna get you into treatment.
Okay.
And then there was lots of things that had come up in there, right? Like, as I'm doing RDAP and as I'm doing all the programs, because I can't stay on the block, right?
Right.
And I was like, I got a lot of, like, there's a lot of pieces that that I should maybe look at. This is probably more serious than I thought it was.
Okay.
And this goes way back to that kid in me. So then I decided I was going to go to treatment in Draper, the all women's Annie's House Steps, right?
I know it well.
I was like, I cannot be distracted by boys, and I cannot do treatment in St. George because I won't stay. Yeah. Like, I won't. My family is a mess. My father-in-law had, he passed away while I was in there, and it was just, the family was destroyed, and he was kind of like the only dad I'd ever known, right? Like we had cooking in common, and we had those conversations of him being like, you're so much more. Like, just please get it together.
Yeah.
You know? And so I was like, well, and my daughter was, you know, basically had the conversation of like, I'm not doing this with you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, me and my boyfriend were going to move away, and I'm not telling you where I'm moving, and you won't have anything to do with my life. And like, and again, it was like, I broke.
Yeah.
Right? Because I felt the pain. And I couldn't run from it, right? I'm in jail, so like there's no running, there's no numbing, there's no nothing. And I had to make that decision of, am I willing to walk away from my kids indefinitely?
Yes.
And this is the life I live, and I live or die, I don't care. Or my kids, I deserve a relationship with my kids. I am deserving of that. And that is what came upon me. I didn't know that I was deserving of anything else, but I knew that I was deserving of being my kids' mom. And so I was like, so I, you know, did a video call with them, and I said, so I've changed my mind, and I'm going to treatment in Draper. And then it was, you're leaving us. How are we going to see you? And this and that. And I said, look, like, I've got to really be truly committed. And if I'm going to do this, I cannot be doing it just to get out of jail and have no intention of doing the work.
Good for you.
And so I made that conscious decision of like, this is not my life. Like, I am not like the revolving door. Like, you know, where like the guards know you and, oh, Miss Pride, we figured you'd be back. Oh, you know, and when are you going to figure it out? Like, you know, like all those things, you know, and I'm like, oh no, like this is not my life. Yeah. And, so I came up to Draper, and the only stipulation I had, right, when I met with my therapist was like, I will do whatever you're suggesting. I will be as vulnerable as you need me to do, but I am not discussing my marriage. Right? Like, I'm not going to come in here and have you be like, he's bad for you and you guys aren't good for, you know, like, that's not happening. Right. Like, I will do whatever work you need me to do on me, but that one thing, we're bookshelfing. Yeah. And he's like, okay, like, I can work with that. Okay. Right? Because in that moment, I loved him, and I was like, we're going to figure this out. I'm going to go to treatment, and we're going to get it together, and we've gone through so many things, and I mean, you don't just throw away, I mean, at this point, I think it was 16 years or something. I mean, a long time, right? Yeah. And, but then I never realized how intense treatment and therapy and processing and all of the things are. And I was like, holy, right? Yeah. Like, I got some baggage. Like,
I was not expecting
how much
this.
time do we have, right? Like, because I don't know if we have enough. Right. But I just did all the things. Yeah. And then I said, okay, like, I'm gonna do day treatment. And then I was doing, it was, you know, step down to IOP. Right. And then it was like, okay, so are you going back to St. George? Or are we transferring your probation? Yes. And so then I had to have that honest conversation of like, I don't think I can go back to St. George. Like, I can't go back. But that's where my kids were. Yeah. And that's where the only life that I knew was. So, and I remember having the conversation of, you guys are all asking me to let go of the toxic. And I said, but do you realize that every single person in my life in this moment is toxic? Like, I don't understand what you're asking. Like, you're really asking me to step into this big black hole of nothing. Yes. With the hopes of recovery. Yeah. Alone. And to let all that go. Right. Like, that's not happening. I'm not going to do this alone. Right. Like, I'm not strong enough, and I'm not capable. And I can't do it. Yeah. right? I can't. Like, that's too much. Nope, ask another question.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, we'll revisit it. And I'm like, we're not going to revisit it.
No,
because like it's
I've
not
already told you
happening.
this is
like plan B. What's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
next? Like, let's move on. You know, something I'm capable of doing. And it was. I love my therapist to this day for this. So the last part of my day treatment before I transitioned over, right? Like, she had me start reading the Codependent No More book, right?
Okay.
And in my mind, like, codependent is that clingy girl, right?
Yeah,
like
it's
the
much
clingy
more than
and
that.
all the things. I'm like, I am not codependent.
No.
Like, that's no. I can be alone.
Yeah.
And I'm fine. Like, she's like, okay, so I'm gonna challenge you. Read the first 2 chapters and highlight everything that you identify with, and then we'll discuss whether or not this is a good fit.
Yeah.
Right, so I go and I do my homework, and I'm like, everything was highlighted. I was like, oh, I am codependent, like,
oh boy.
like the highest degree codependent, right?
Yeah.
I had all the things, and so I go back, and she's like, so I see that you've got a lot of highlights there.
Oh boy.
And I said, okay, you're right. Fine.
Yeah.
And but there's still that belief, right? You get sober, and then you gain weight.
Yeah.
And so then those insecurities were creeping in.
Those
and
are coming
like,
back. Wow.
And my truth and my perception of the world really was that, like, I was being judged based on my physical appearance. And if I couldn't figure out my physical appearance, like, it didn't matter the therapy that I did. It didn't matter anything else. Like, I was still going to lose it all in the end.
Yeah.
And I remember her being like, all I see is a beautiful person sitting in front of me.
Yeah.
And she's like, do you believe me? And I said, well, you haven't lied to me yet, so I don't know why you would now.
Right.
I don't believe it, and I don't see what you're seeing. So she was like, well, just hold on to my belief, and we'll get there. And so I just kept doing the work, and I kept, all the service, right? I do outreach. Any organization was doing something, I was there.
Yeah.
Got a sponsor, started working the steps. And then things just started kind of falling into place, right? Like, I got a job, and then slowly, like, at first my boys moved up here. They were living with Christian's dad and his family, because at the time I didn't have a place. Like, I was renting my first sponsors, like, a room from her.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have the capacity, but I'm working towards that. Just give me a little bit of time. At this point, my daughter still was like, I've heard this 100 times. Okay. And the boys were like, no, like, it really is different.
Yeah.
Like, be nice to mom.
Yeah.
Like, it's different. She's like, you guys are always soft to mom. Like, and it had been probably 8 months since I saw her.
Yeah.
And she planned this surprise visit. They came up from St. George and surprised me. And we spent the whole weekend doing just, hanging out. And it was when she left, like, the genuine sadness of, like, And then she called me on the way home, and she was like, we're moving up there. And I said, what? She's like, they were right, and you are different. And, like, I've never seen you be so, like, peaceful, right? At some, and it's like, I can't identify, like, the exact moment, but at some moment, doing all the work and showing up, there was a switch, right?
Yeah.
And now I have peace, and I'm responding to things. I still didn't necessarily have, like, a full belief that I was enough.
Right.
But the one thing that I held on to, I knew that I was deserving to be their mom. And if for nothing else, I needed to show them the possibility of change and of healing. And
you think your son saw that, where maybe your daughter was a little bit hesitant?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for my daughter, it was harder too, right? Because I had always been the safety net.
Yeah.
Right? They had experienced this with their dad. They had gotten, but I was the one that always kind of held it down. So when I was gone, it broke that safety, and it broke that security, and it broke the trust on a whole different level. And today we're best friends, right? She
Good.
does all the things with me, and
I've met her. She's
Yeah.
awesome. She's awesome. I'd like to have her in here and
Yeah.
tell her side of the story too. But anyway.
So, you know, and the relationship I have with my boys too, right? Like I'm best friends with my ex now, right? Like we're best friends, and I have that relationship. We're still one united family, and we're in recovery, and we get to show up for each other. We get to show up for our kids. And I still struggle. I mean, I just barely did like an arrow breaking.
Yeah.
And
you were sharing that with me.
yeah,
That's cool.
and I feel like today in this moment is probably the most confident that I've been in my entire life.
Awesome.
Like I feel like I'm actually free of those beliefs that I carried. You know.
Well, and congratulations for not giving up.
Thank
you. For hanging in there. Oh my gosh. I mean, at any point you could have just said, "I'm out."
Yeah. Well, and you know, the cool thing about it too is the takeaway. The biggest takeaway for me is, you know, where I work and the job that I get to do.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's showcase that because you were very excited about.
Yeah,
this here.
I work for Mental Health America of Utah. We currently have a drop-in center. We do peer support and what it is it's a place for anyone and everyone to come. We have different groups. Right now, you know, we do have a lot of the unsheltered population that comes. Being able to say, look, I've lived in shelter and I've lived on the street and you're not alone and you matter.
And you have no idea how much that helps those people. You know, because people don't see that. The fact that you've been there, done that, conquered it, and just to be able to reach out to those people, that's just heartwarming.
And truly feeling it, right? Like, to my core, I can say, like, I know what it's like to feel like you are the common denominator and the world would be better off without you. You know, I've had my own attempts, and I've had those moments where it was like, I'm done, like tap out, you know, and so to be able to be a part of something where, you know, we are helping change the stigma of what that is, right? These aren't just people that asked for it. These aren't people that are deserving of it, right? These are people with a story, and at the end of the day, like, they're humans and they deserve love and they deserve that kindness, and you know, and they come in and they're like, oh, thank you guys so much, and it's like the gratitude of having a peanut butter and jelly and having some water, or those aspects of just someone being like, you're safe, we see you. And I think it's full circle, right? I never thought I would be in a place to where, like, my voice would matter. And you know, now I have a boss who's like, we're going to the top. Like,
nice.
We are going to be a part of changing the stigma, and
Fantastic.
I want you there, you know, and so.
Fantastic. Well, tell people about the program. Tell them how they can get a hold. There's your camera right there. You can tell them exactly where to get a hold of.
Mental Health America of Utah, we are located at 1659 West North Temple, Salt Lake City, Utah. We are the old Ramada building on the corner, and we are there Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can come in to the drop-in center, get some coffee, something to eat. If you need help with, you just need someone to talk to. If you want to come to, we have recovery meetings. We have, you know, we do 5 meetings a week. You can go to our Facebook page, Mental Health America of Utah, and we have our schedule on there as well. We do clothing on Fridays. We, you know, have lots of ability to connect you with resources to help you, and we will love on you and support you and you know, do whatever we can to help ease the burden of being unsheltered, and anyone is welcome, whether you're unsheltered or you're housed and you just need some support and some community. We will be your community. So we'd love to have you come check us out, and I don't know. I love what I do. Like, I love
Awesome.
going to work.
Awesome. I know that because that's where I met you here this last April for the first time when at an event that we did together and at a summit meeting, and it was so great. We were able to go to dinner, and it was wonderful to hear your story, and that's why you're here. Because I wanted the world to hear this, to hear your story here. But Amber, thank you so much for being vulnerable.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for sticking with it and being here. I have no doubt that the future from here on out, your life will be better. And you will see that everything you've gone through is for a purpose, and God's going to use you as a tool in His hands to helping a lot of people, and I think you know that.
Yes, so, and I'm ready for it, and thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Amber. All right, everybody. Amber Bride here is our guest today, sharing her story of overcoming the challenges that she has. Again, listen to this. If you've lost hope, listen to this over and over again until you gain that hope and you're ready to fight and get out there. There's so much wonderful things out there in this world, in spite of all the crap that we see going on, and I know that, and I believe that. So let's do whatever we can to make this world a better place. I'm going to take a quick one more last break here. When I come back, I'll summarize everything up, and we'll send it off. But thank you so much, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody, and welcome back. Just wrapping things up here. Our guest today, Amber Bride. We are so grateful to have her and for her to share her story. She wasn't kidding that her challenges started at birth. She really had a lot of obstacles that she needed to overcome and to fight through. And again, as we said at the top of the show, we all have these our own unique journeys in life, and a lot of us have more teaching moments in our life than others, and things we have to go through, and none of us get to choose the circumstances that we are born into, and yet we do have the right and the opportunity to choose how we react to what things are thrown at us in this life, and that's what really makes the difference. Stop looking at your challenges as suffering moments or being punished from your higher power, or however you're choosing to look at it. Amber touched on this many times throughout, where she was angry with God. She was angry with a lot of people in her life, felt like she was not being supported, but yet she came to the realization that, you know what, I need to take things by the horns and do what's best for me and for my family. And at that point, she made the decision to get herself clean and to get through all of the things that she had to go through. It was just amazing to me. And so, Amber, you're awesome. We're here with you. You rock, and we want to help you any way that we can here too. You definitely fit the mold of resilience, showing what can be done, and there are many great and wonderful things ahead of you in this life coming up. So again, another awesome interview. I'm Brad Neufeld. This is Resilience Talk Network. Please, if you want to tell people about our shows, share these videos as you see them, put them out there to the world. You never know who they're going to help. And that's one thing being in this business of life coaching, that you never know what you're going to say at one point. I get calls all the time from people that said, oh, about 30 years ago you said XYZ, and it just stuck with me. And it's just amazing. If I hadn't said anything, or if I'd have never put myself out there, none of that would have happened. And so you never know who you're going to touch. And there's wonderful things that can happen by putting yourself out there as well. But if you have a story that you'd like to share, please give me a call at area code 435-830-6945. That's 435-830-6945. You can email me at info@resiliencetalk.com. Once again, info@resiliencetalk.com. But look us up on our YouTube channel, on all social media. We've got both audio and video clips. They're all over the place. Just Google them and you'll find us. Be sure and hit like or subscribe on our YouTube channel or on Facebook. Let us know you're out there, and let us know what you think of our stories. Keep it going, keep hanging in there, keep going for everything that you want in life. Make it happen, and we'll see you on the next one.